Even though Gia...
You don't have to do the bad pronunciation that we do here. It's okay. You can do whatever you want. I'm just committing to the bit until I die. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 32-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. I read them as an adult because I was on a quest to determine if it was a book series that society had been sleeping on. I said yes, and now I'm seeing if society has also been sleeping on the Heroes of Olympus series. And I am joined today by two special guests who you've heard on the podcast before, but we had to get them back for the Seattle chapters. Obviously, it is Erin and Manasa from Camp Half Pod. Folks, how's it going?
It's going... fine. Hello.
I'm so stoked to have you both back. It's funny because I feel like you called dibs on these chapters roughly 17 to 18 years ago. And at the time, I was like, that is such a specific chapter set to request. And I was just like, okay, no questions asked. You know, everyone has their favorite sections. So I just marked it in my spreadsheet many moons ago. And then as I read the beginning of The Son of Neptune and there was hints of them going towards the Pacific Northwest, I was like, I see. And then the way scheduling kind of worked out, I felt bad because you had originally said anything from 30 to 32 and just how it worked with the recordings and live shows. We did chapter 30 2 days ago, at least at the time of recording. We're recording this on February 3rd in Hartford. And I was like, they're not getting the beginning chapter. I bet that has the most Seattle stuff in it, but that's just how it works. They didn't do much of anything in Seattle, and I was very disappointed. So I think you actually got the sweet end of the deal because these two chapters absolutely rip, and they didn't do anything Seattle-based in chapter 30. So I feel like we're fine.
You know, at the end of the day, we just love Amazon so much. It's our local store. We shop locally only, Costco and Amazon, Nordstrom and Starbucks. So that's why we wanted to be here.
I know. You know, Seattleites just love Amazon so much.
Oh, for sure.
Famously.
Oh, gosh. I used to always make the joke when I lived there because people would talk about coffee. And when friends would visit, they would be like, oh, like, what's a good coffee shop? And I would always make a joke of like, oh, there's this great local spot. They have some sort of funky logo. It's like a mermaid or a siren or something. But they have a couple locations across the city. But yeah, I mean, it's... as far as the brands go, I mean, Costco for the most part is good. I know they just did something like kind of union busting-y, which isn't great. Like they gave raises to everyone except for their union people, which was like, Costco, you had such a good run where you were doing good stuff. The hot dog is still $1.50. You didn't get rid of all your DEI things like every single other company in America, apparently. So I was like, yay, Costco, cool. And then that. But for the most part, I think they're all right. But regardless, tough run for Seattle-based companies. And
True.
I let out just an audible groan when I learned that the Amazon thing was happening in this chapter.
Right.
So not my favorite thing, especially as a very notorious Amazon not fan, I would say, to put it the most mildly. But... these two chapters where they actually are doing the stuff with the Amazon warriors and everything, it's really cool. So I'll take it. And I really enjoyed these two chapters. So I'm super stoked to discuss them with the two of you.
Oh, yeah. They're great.
I love the idea that Rick was sitting in the corner and the moment he thought of Amazon connection, he was cackling. He was like, this is amazing. No one will see this coming.
Right. It's so obvious that you don't think he's going to do it. Like it comes back around to being genius just because you think surely he won't, and then he does. Now, before we get into these chapters, since you are both now repeat guests on the podcast, we'll have to ask you the repeat guest question, which is, what cabins would you be in? And now that we're in Heroes of Olympus Town, you can pick minor gods and everything. So what cabins do you think you'd be in?
Ooh. Manasa, you go first because who you say is your godly parent on our podcast does not have a cabin.
No. So I started off when we did the podcast saying daughter of Poseidon because I love Percy Jackson, but I was like, do I relate to anything to do with Poseidon? And I really don't. So I decided to be different and quirky and not like other girls. So I chose Persephone because I'm born in like the first couple days of spring. I've always loved spring as the weather as a season. And so I was like, I also like that she's in theory multifaceted and an interesting dark and light character. But that being said, cabin-wise, I think I'd have to go back to my original roots just because the idea of having like a pool in my house has always intrigued me. So I would do a cabin for Poseidon for sure.
Awesome. Love that. Erin, what about you?
Child of Athena for me as a Virgo, a planning girly. I feel an affinity for that part of Athena, the bookishness. I do also have a love for Hestia, but she does not have a cabin either. I mean, I know that she's a maiden goddess, but Hestia would be my other one.
But Hera has one.
Yeah, does Hestia have a ceremonial one like Artemis? I would assume she does.
I hope so.
Or maybe not. Is she just the hearth? Does she have a does she have a cabin?
I feel like she's the one who doesn't ask for one, so she doesn't get it.
Ugh.
Yeah, I don't think she has a ceremonial one. I know Artemis does, and then there's Hera's, obviously. In The Lost Hero, they went there. So yeah, I'm afraid to Google it because I'm always afraid of Googling specific Percy Jackson questions on the internet because then they'll tell me something from, Trials of Apollo Book 4, Chapter 15 or whatever. But yeah, that's interesting. There are a lot of cool gods and goddesses that you can't necessarily choose as the cabin, but I like trying to throw a nod to that. Like Artemis Rips, it would be so cool to be in the Artemis cabin, but alas, ceremonial and nothing more. But
yeah.
Oh, did you find an answer, Manasa?
I did. I was like, I have the power of Google. So,
Yay!
So according to what I'm seeing here is that she has no cabin. It just isn't her style, is what she says.
Ooh.
Is that how Percy describes it, I think. And AI overview, because you don't know to be sacred anymore.
No, God, oh Lord. AI overview, Hestia is a cheese that you can oh, the worst.
It says that Hestia and Hades didn't have cabins because they didn't have thrones all in Olympus, obviously, which was like one of the main issues of the original series.
Oh, interesting.
But I think then Hades has a full child, so they're like, he has to have a house. So they built him one.
Yeah, they definitely built him one at the end of book 5 because
Yeah.
they've talked about Nico and it's got the ominous Hades vibes. Okay, let's get Hestia one too. But you know what? Truly, if it's not her style, we don't have to give her one. Let her choose. She can let us know, but there should be something. There's got to be something for Hestia. But regardless, let's talk about these chapters. So we'll begin with chapter 31, which is called Hazel, but we will do our classic thing that I've been doing for these chapters where I come up with a quirky Percy Jackson-esque title by the end of it.
Ooh.
So if you want to get your brains going for what the retitling would be by the end of this chapter. But where we last left our heroes, Hilla just told Hazel that they need to talk. And the reason that they need to talk is because she might die by midnight, which, okay, I was very surprised. So let's get into it so we can see what's going on. The opening line of chapter 31 is, quote, Hazel considered making a run for it, which, okay, yeah, I mean, not a bad instinct.
Fair.
The reason that she was considering making this run is that she does not trust Hilla, and she super duper doesn't trust this Otrera person that she just met. And she lets us know as the narrator that there are 3 guards remaining in the room. They are keeping their distance. And Hazel notes that Hilla is only armed with a dagger, and she thinks, okay, I could do some sort of distraction with my Pluto powers. I could do an earthquake. I could summon, quote, a big pile of schist, which I love. It's always a big pile of schist. Anytime schist is referenced, it's not just I could summon schist. It's always a big pile of it. She thinks she could also summon gold since they're so low underground. But she is thinking, I've seen how adept at combat these Amazons are, so I'm not really sure that I could take them one against however many unarmed. So she's worried about the possibility of a distraction plan even working. She also still has Frank's stick, which is nice, I guess, but also terrifying. It's one of these weird things where she's like, yay, they didn't take it from me. But then also like, oh God, you got to make sure there's no fire involved in anything that you're doing over the next few pages.
It's a lot.
I always imagined it as someone just giving you a baby and you love this baby. But now you have to take care of this baby.
Yeah, look, it's terrifying. I mean, as a recent parent, you get a little bit of that. Like when they told us to leave the hospital, I was like, oh God, are you sure? Like no nurses, nothing, just us? It's just us? And, thankfully our parents were there to help us out a little bit. But just like, we got to figure this out? Okay, sure. So Hilla, as if she's reading Hazel's thoughts, says that they would respect Hazel for trying to escape, but they would also kill her for doing so. So maybe it's not in your best interest. Hazel thanks her for the heads up. Hilla says that it's the least that she can do for someone that she truly believes has come here in peace and at her sister's request. So Hazel asks, well, then why won't you help us? And Hilla looks at the ring that she had taken from Percy. She took his whole necklace. She looks at the ring and goes, it's complicated. She explains that Amazons have difficult relationships with demigods, especially male demigods. She tells a story about how they fought for King Priam in the Trojan War, but Achilles killed their queen, Penthesilea. I got to talk to Dr. Moy about this, unless the two of you are well-versed in the Trojan War and such.
We're notorious for pronouncing things wrong. So
Okay.
I think sometimes we just like purposely pronounce it wrong because if we try, it'll be incorrect. So I wouldn't come to us for those questions.
But I didn't even know if you knew anything just like about this particular aspect of the Trojan War. I mean, my knowledge of it starts and ends with the Brad Pitt movie, but even that, I don't remember much of it except for like the cool action scenes.
That Brad Pitt movie, deep cut, I watched that like in middle school at Monasa's house
Yeah, that's true. We
on
watched
like
it for the
your
first time
laptop
together.
because Orlando Bloom was in it. And I was like,
Yes.
I need to watch anything with Orlando Bloom in it.
I mean, that's just a smart decision in the mid 2000s. It's what you got to
So,
do.
yeah.
I know the story is basically like the Amazonian queen walks in and everyone thinks that they're saved because they're doing really well with obviously these amazing fighters. And I think in the original text, it's like the only time that Homer is like, women, that's cool. Like they can do things.
Shout
And
out.
then it's very quickly that Achilles is like, goes like arm to arm with her, but it kills her eventually. And he's like very respectful. He's like very impressed that she's a female warrior, which is, I guess, the most you can ask.
Yeah, but not impressed enough to not kill her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember much more than that. That's just like a little tidbit that I do remember. But
Gotcha. We'll discuss it further when I do the myth wrap up with Dr. Moya at the end of this book. But Hilla continues saying that before this happened, Hercules stole Queen Hippolyte? I think Hippolyte would be my guess. Her belt, and it's the same cool interlocking gold belt that Hilla is wearing that I need in my fashion wardrobe immediately. And she then continues that even before that, a hero named Bellerophon killed their first queen, Otrera. And I was like, whoa, Otrera is the first queen? That's wild. Like she's super old school. And I feel like I've heard about this hero before. I don't know if he's in a different story. I want to say my niece, who is into mythology and stuff, told me about this hero when I was prepping for the TNO live show we did in Dallas, where she lives. And she asked some sort of question like, do you know this person? And I was like, no. I thought I was going to be able to say yes to any of your questions, but you've out-Greek mythologied me. But Hazel then checks that this Otrera that was just mentioned by Hilla is the same Otrera from a couple of seconds ago, and Hilla confirms and identifies her as a daughter of Ares. And Hazel goes, oh, do you mean Mars? And Hilla confirms, no, I definitely mean Ares. She explains the reason she knows this for sure is because Otrera lived well before Rome even existed, when all demigods were Greek. She says that it's unfortunate, but some of their ranks still prefer the old ways, and she adds the children of the Ares are always the worst. And I'm sure Percy felt a rush of energy inside of the cell, like something good just happened, and he can't tell exactly what, but he's just feeling happier in general. And I didn't even really put some stuff together until narrator Hazel says, quote, Hazel had heard rumors about Greek demigods. And I was like, oh, right, Hazel doesn't know the full story. She doesn't know this whole thing. So when she's asking, do you mean Mars? It's not any sort of, oh, Greek versus Roman, I'm trying to say the right thing. It's just straight up, she doesn't think that there are demigods that aren't Roman. So it's very fascinating. And it's also, of course, it works for the plot that Percy is not around for this conversation. So we just have a Roman-only person having this sort of talk, and Percy doesn't necessarily have some, oh my goodness, my memories are coming back moment. But I had completely forgotten about this dynamic.
I had a question, though. Do Amazons exist in Roman mythology, or did Hazel just was like, yeah, I know about this race of people and this culture because of other reasons?
In the live show that we did a couple of days ago, I believe I asked this of Emily, and I believe she said something to the effect of that they were kind of like their own thing, and it was more Greek than Roman, but because the Roman folks did a lot of kind of copy-paste and twist stuff, that it was probably around. I'm remembering things in bits and pieces, but I will be honest, like anytime I'm doing these podcasts, I usually forget what I've said like immediately when we stop recording, but especially in a live show where my brain is going a million miles an hour because I'm trying to do the podcast and then also make an entertaining thing for people in the crowd. And now all the podcast people are like, we heard this last week, Mike, you don't have to explain it. But I think like the answer is that yes, they were around, but it was kind of like their own sort of separate stories. They weren't necessarily like integrated into the Roman stuff and then flipped around. Like they're trying to take Ares and turn him into Mars and stuff like that.
Like they didn't get a new name, but they're the same concept.
Exactly. There's not like a twist or anything like that. Now, narrator Hazel says that Octavian believes that the Greek demigods did exist and they have been plotting against Camp Jupiter. Hazel never bought these stories, even after Percy arrived. Quote, he just didn't strike her as an evil, scheming Greek. And she is so close to getting it. She is so close to getting it. But she's also 13, so I can understand not taking the next step of, oh, wait, the Greeks are supposed to be bad. Percy seems like a Greek. Oh, but he's not bad, so he can't be that. Like, you're not necessarily going to go to the next level of maybe what I've been told about the Greeks is incorrect. So, just so close, so close. And then Frank will have something later in these sets of chapters where he's also so close. I'm very interested to see their reactions when they finally learn, because they have been beating around the bush of Percy is Greek this entire book. And I'm excited to see how they finally react when the truth is unveiled. Hazel checks that the Amazons are a mix of Greek and Roman, and Hilla takes the ring off of the necklace, and that confirms to me they didn't explain when she ripped off the necklace how she did it, so I thought maybe the beads and everything flew around everywhere when she ripped it off Percy's neck, but I guess she ripped it in a way where just the fastening bit broke off and everything stayed intact. But she looks at the ring and says, I suppose they don't teach you that at Camp Jupiter. And then she gets into the gods taking different forms for the different cultures. She says that the gods are Greek, they're Roman, they're American. And that made me wonder, are the ones that we know the American versions? Like, I always thought that the people we met in the first 5 books are the Greek versions, but they are in a situation where they are in Olympus in America. So are they different? I guess you have things like Ares using a motorcycle and stuff, but to my understanding, that was their Greek form. It's not like when, I'm assuming, they go to Greece in the next book that the gods are going to be completely different. That was at least my read on it, is that it's just like they're still the Greek ones, but maybe they have a bit of an American twist. Things like Dionysus liking Diet Coke and Pac-Man, but I don't think there's like a third iteration fully Greek out there waiting for us. Yeah?
That's always been my interpretation too, as like they kind of got infused with American culture because like some of those, like Ares is so American, painfully American, shamefully actually. So I think they got infused with it, but they're still the Greek version is how I read it.
Yeah, so we're on the same page there. So Hazel asks if all Amazons are demigods. Hilla says that they all have some sort of immortal blood, but many of them are descendants of demigods. She explains that some come from a long line of Amazons, some are the children of minor gods. She starts to cite Kinsey as an example, saying that she's the daughter of a nymph, and Kinsey enters right on cue. She reports that the prisoners are locked away, but says that Otrera insisted that her followers guard the cells. Kinsey apologizes. And when this first came out, I was like, this is kind of a weirdly specific thing. And then it becomes incredibly relevant to the next chapter. So then it made sense a lot later. Hilla says, nah, don't worry about it, and asks her to stay because they are discussing, quote, our situation. Never good when someone says our situation in general, but specifically our, situation. Ooh, it's bad. That's a bad situation. You don't want to be a part of this one. Hazel guesses that Gia, if you have not been listening to TNO, I've been calling Gaia Gia because the audiobook calls her Gia. So,
oh, does it really?
Yes.
Oh,
it's
interesting.
ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
That's wrong.
Gia feels like a girl I know. Gaia feels like the earth, you know? But interesting, go off.
Gia's like a friend, you know?
Yeah,
Like
she's your
Gia.
Italian friend.
Yeah.
Like, short for Gianna, yes. Like, that's Gia. Hazel guesses that Gia brought Otrera back to start a civil war, between the Amazons. And Hilla says, if that's the plan, it's definitely working. And she continues to say that Otrera is a legend, which completely makes sense. This would be like if George Washington came back and was like, I'm going to be president. And you know what? Wouldn't hate that right now.
I'd take it. I mean, well, I don't know.
I'd
see how he adjusts to modern time.
It can't be worse, right?
Well, you just have to kind of remind him that slavery isn't a thing anymore.
Right.
And
get
then
him up
bring
to
him back.
speed on like social.
Women can vote.
Yeah. See if he takes to that. If he doesn't, then it might be bad. But, I'd try
I feel like he would, at least given what I know. But who knows how accurate the history books are.
Based off all the cartoons of him, like cutting down the tree or whatever.
Yeah, we should show him how we depict him. This is what we think you are. So act like this, please. Just pop in Hamilton. Be like this dude. All right?
Yeah.
Can you just be him?
Please.
Anyway, Percy Jackson. So she's a legend. She promises to lead them to war against the Romans. And Hazel finds this impossible since Otrera is a spirit and starts to say she isn't even, and Hilla finishes real. And I was confused about this. What about this makes Hazel want to say that she's not real? Like, she's like not a ghost walking around in these chapters, right?
I think because she's a legend. And so it's more of like she's come back. And so I think Hazel is thinking of her as a ghost.
Okay.
Has not like conceptualized that even though Gia
You don't have to do
back,
the bad pronunciation that we do here. It's okay. You can do whatever you want. I'm just committing to the bit until I die.
Oh, I love that. I respect
Gianna.
I think that for her, it's the similar vibe of like she's a legend. Now I don't know what to call her. I'm like, Gia? Okay. Gaia basically brought her back, but is it in the same way she brought Hazel back? Is it the same way that Hazel was able to come back? You know what I mean? Like Hazel was brought back mostly by Nico, and Nico is in charge of the dead. So he has jurisdiction, whereas like Gaia kind of doesn't. So Hazel's like, oh, she partially brought this legend back.
Well, and also Otrera can't die because she will just keep I guess allegedly no one can die right now because of the doors and all of that stuff. But I think that Hazel's trying to differentiate from her as well. Because maybe in this chapter, maybe it's about to happen where Hilla says like, oh, I can sense a soul that's returned, and kind of like gives Hazel a look. And she recognizes that Hazel is also from a different time period. And I think Hazel's trying to, in her own mind, differentiate herself from like, it's a different situation.
Yeah, I guess it could just be like she's the spirit is just trying to say she's being resurrected. So maybe just like, she's back, but like this is a strange situation to take someone who was the queen and then just straight up died and make her the queen again. So, okay, I get it. Like in Hazel's mind, she's been dead for so long. She is a spirit. That is what Hazel knows her as. So, okay, I can see that. All right, sweet. Okay, thank you. Glad we could talk this through because I was confused.
Yeah.
And maybe it is even the next level thing of Hazel doesn't want to reveal that she's also technically a spirit. But immediately Hilla calls her out. She says, I can tell when people have returned from the underworld. Asks her, when did you die? 1920s, 1930s? And Hazel replies 1942. But she explains it wasn't Gia's doing. She says that she is here to stop Gia. It's her second chance. And then Hilla uses the phrase second chance as a way to kind of segue into talking about Percy. He destroyed her old life. Quote, you wouldn't have recognized me back then. I wore dresses and makeup. I was a glorified secretary, an accursed Barbie doll. Which is just a great turn of phrase.
Not like other girls.
Worst punishment is a dress. Being feminine, so awful.
Yeah, just adding to the laundry list of Rick Riordan women characters who are like, I'm a tomboy. Like, all right, Rick, you can write a different person. I'm glad, I guess, no, because Piper's, I guess we've got like, even Selena, who's not even like, I wouldn't say like fully straight up, she's at least got complexity to her. Like, do we have a single girl that we like that also cares about things like appearances and makeup? Like, I want the Percy Jackson universe character who kicks ass and also does a killer cat eye. Like, that's what I need just to show that it's okay to care about your looks and then also kick some butt.
I agree. I don't think we get that.
No.
Like, Rick, come on. He's still writing. He could do that.
It's never too late.
Yeah.
So Kinsey, after the accursed Barbie doll line, does a claw over the heart maneuver like she's fending off evil spirits. Hilla says that Circe's island was a safe place for her and her sister. She wanted to protect Arena from all the bloodshed that comes along with being a daughter of Bellona, the war goddess. And then she says, quote, then Percy Jackson unleashed the pirates. And I just feel like we need to get it right. Technically, it was Annabeth, right? Like, she poured the vitamins. I don't...
That's true.
I guess it's because he's a boy, so they're going to blame the boy. But I feel like, at the very least, you should be saying they were both responsible, because it wasn't just Percy.
I feel like it's low-key that they saw Annabeth do it, and they're like, oh, it's just because she was under the influence of this boy. Like, Annabeth could not, like, a woman couldn't do this.
Meanwhile, the boy is like a gerbil. They're like, she's under his influence. He's like eating out of her palm.
She says that being kidnapped forced them to be tough, and they learned that they were good with weapons. And she says that she's wanted revenge for the past 4 years. And it's funny because at the live show, we asked how long has it been since the Sea of Monsters, and someone within milliseconds said 4 years. And maybe they just knew it, but also maybe they also read this next chapter where there's a line that like clearly identifies that it's 4 years. But it was like instantaneous. Like we said it, someone in the crowd knew, was like, wow. But that being said, my listeners are generally very smart when it comes to these things because most people, unlike me, have read these more than one time. Mm-hmm. Hazel says that this could be their destiny, though, as Reyna became Praetor and Hilla became Queen of the Amazons. And like, yeah, you two have found yourselves in fantastic situations for the most part. Yes, they are both in these leadership positions that are both maybe going to go away because they're going to get defeated in battle, but you have risen to great ranks. So is it the worst thing that's going to happen?
Like, it's such a perspective shift of like, yeah, but maybe your trauma was good because now you have a throne, you know? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
You know what? If trauma got me a throne, you know, all it got me is anxiety. So like, maybe I should get a throne.
I forget the exact line, but a couple weeks ago saw Gary Goldman's one-man show, Grandiloquent, in New York City. He's one of my favorite comedians. He's fantastic, very thoughtful, incredible wordsmith. And he has a line in the show, not to give it away, because I'm sure they'll have a filmed version and all that, but like basically there becomes the question similar to this of like, was the trauma that I went through worth it? Because at the other end of it, some good stuff happened and I was able to, you know, use it to do something else. And someone tells him something to the effect of like, we need to stop cutting our trauma all of this slack. Like, if you have trauma, you don't have to be like, well, actually, it was good. Like, no, you could have your trauma and be like, that was awful. That was so bad. No one should have to go through it. I think the person tells him, like, you would have achieved this anyway without the trauma. You maybe would have achieved this sooner had you not had to deal with the trauma. So don't credit your trauma with your success. Credit yourself. It's really good. If there's ever a thing, like if they filmed it and it becomes streamed, like everyone should watch it. It was really good. By the time this episode comes out, its run in New York City will be done. And then he also has a book that a lot of the stories were in. I believe it's called Misfit. That's really solid as well. This is free promotion of Gary Goldman. He's a nice person and a great comedian, and I respect him a lot.
That's great. I've not heard of him.
Amazing.
So add that to the list.
Oh, beautiful. A lot of his albums are on Spotify, so you can just like listen to them. Then he has like some streamed on like different streaming stuff, but just like a top notch, especially if you're a nerd, like super nerdy stuff. If anyone's going to listen to one joke, listen to his Trader Joe's joke. It's like 30 minutes and it's unreal comedy.
Amazing.
Anyway, Percy Jackson. So Hilla says that she may not be queen for much longer while she's fiddling with the necklace. And I keep wondering, like, when are they going to tell us about this necklace? What's the ring? What's going on? And I don't think we ever learn in these 2 chapters what it is, right? Did they ever let us know what this ring is?
Not really. No. I don't think so.
I'm assuming we're going to get some sort of either return of Hilla or Reyna or something, and then it'll be discussed. But I was just making sure that in these 2 chapters, I didn't get what the ring was. I really thought she was going to say something here, but she didn't. So Hilla explains that Otrera challenged her to a duel, as every Amazon has the right to do. Very Black Panther. Hazel gives a great response. She goes, but you're good, right? Which is a perfect question to ask. And It's funny enough for even Hilla to smirk and confirm, but she says that Otrera is the founder of the Amazons. She clearly earned that position. And then Hazel says, well, yeah, but she's older. She's been dead for a while. Maybe she's out of practice. And Hilla says, well, yeah, I hope that's true because this is a fight to the death. So the stakes are relatively high. And then Hazel realizes, oh, even if you beat her, she'll just return. She won't actually stay dead. And Hilla agrees, saying that she figures Otrera will just challenge again the next day if she loses, and she'll just keep on doing this and wearing Hilla down, and then eventually she will reign victorious. And that sucks. That's very frustrating. The deck is stacked against Hilla for sure. Mm-hmm. Hazel thinks that there has to be a way and asks, don't Amazons have special powers or something? I love it. I love these questions. It's the perfect stuff to ask. Hilla says that they don't have any more special powers than any other demigod, and they can die like any mortal. And then she has a great line, quote, there is a group of archers who follow the goddess Artemis. They are often mistaken for Amazons, but the hunters forsake the company of men in exchange for almost endless life. We Amazons, we would prefer to live life to the fullest. We love, we fight, we die. And that's great just because when I first was introduced, I was like, oh, these kind of feel like the hunters. So for them to admit it in the book is fun. But also what I kind of find funny is the approach to men. It kind of feels like the Amazons are doing a little bit of hashtag not all men.
But then they simultaneously have the men like working for them with like clearly no benefits. Classic Amazon there. No health insurance, nothing.
No pee breaks, nothing. Yeah.
No.
Nah. We give you cool iron necklaces and matching jumpsuits, and that's about it.
Ooh, yeah.
But yeah, this has Hazel even ask, hold on, I thought you hated men. And Hilla explains, oh no, we like men. We just like showing them who's in charge. She says that regardless, if she could, she would rally the troops to defend her sister, but her power is tenuous. She will eventually lose to Otrera if nothing changes. And whenever she does lose to her, Otrera will then march to Camp Jupiter against Reyna instead of alongside her, which is what Hilla wants to do. Hazel wants to help. Hilla says that she cannot interfere. And I'm thinking there's got to be some sort of technicality. Can we do some sort of thing to make this not work? But what ends up happening, super cool. Hilla also adds that letting the prisoners go would be a sign of weakness. So either she has to execute our team, or Otrera will do so as queen. So doesn't feel like a great situation for Hazel and our friends to be in. Hazel makes a comment about it being game over for both of them, and then Erin, our fast horse friend, wails in the corner, and Hilla thinks that this horse feels her despair, and then adds, thank goodness she says this. She just goes, oh yeah, by the way, he's an immortal horse. He's the son of Neptune and Ceres. And I was like, is the horse the titular character of this book the whole time? Whoa, what a plot twist.
That would have been amazing.
It's at least vague enough. I feel like we're 2 for 2 with this, where the lost hero in the first book is probably Jason, but it could also be Percy because he is lost the whole time. Just a different definition of lost. So at least in this one, it's most likely Percy, but could also be Erin, and Tyson at least has shown up in a dream. So there are at least other people it could be. I wonder if every single title will be roughly technically ambiguous like the first 2 have been.
Mm-hmm.
They find out that it's just called Sons of Neptune instead.
It's about all of them.
Yeah, it's like the Bernstein Bears. I've been reading this book the whole time thinking it's one thing, and then I look and it's like, wait a second, where'd that second S come from?
Sons of Neptune is just like a buddy cop show about Percy and Arion together.
Yes. And then Tyson shows up partway through. Yeah.
I re-looked at our notes from this, which I was like, that was in 2022, which time is alarming to me. But we had a whole thing about the horse girl trope and how this is the untamable horse and the girl with a traumatic background. Nobody can tame the horse. It follows the exact plot of a horse girl movie. And I love that for Hazel.
It's great.
I mean,
I'm all in.
The horse feels her despair. Like, that's how much more can you ask for?
It's beautiful. I love it so much. It's great. So Hazel says, quote, 2 gods had a horse for a kid? And Hilla goes, long story. Obviously, I will have to hear this long story from Dr. Moya when we do our myth roundup. Hilla says that he's the fastest horse in the world. Yeah, he's less famous than Pegasus because he doesn't have wings, but he runs like the wind over land and sea. He is the fastest creature on the planet, according to Hilla, and it took them years to capture him, but it was all for nothing, as he won't let anyone ride him. Her guess is that he hates Amazons, and I just wrote in my notes, Hazel's going to ride this bad boy. I don't know when, but it's definitely going to happen, and we'll just have to continue to see if it happens. But like, with this whole setup, she's riding that horse. You know she's riding that horse. Hilla continues that keeping Arion around is also expensive because his food of choice is gold. And that just locks in that this is the horse that we saw before in Hazel's flashback. Hazel has a little bit of, oh my goodness, thinking about when she saw this horse back in Alaska. So then she kneels and she puts her hand on the ground. The stone floor cracks and a plum-sized piece of gold emerges. She feeds it to Arion. And as she is doing so, Hilla warns, oh, no, wait, look, like trying to get her to not do it because it's dangerous. But Arion eats it very gingerly out of her hand. So clearly already an early sign of things looking to be okay for Hazel, our horse girl, and Arion, our horse.
The troubled horse.
The picture of the horse gingerly eating, it's every horse movie is just like them saying, whoa, easy, and then feeding the horse, even though the horse is probably not even freaking out that much. I love a horse movie.
Mm-hmm. It also reminds me of the John Mulaney joke where just everyone shushes horses. Why are we shushing them all the time? It's like, shh. I don't know. Well, okay. Hilla is stunned, and she reveals that the last girl who tried that now has a metal arm, so she is the Winter Soldier. Hilla appears to take a new interest in Hazel now, explaining that the prophecy stated the horse was destined to have a master, the most courageous female warrior. She would ride this horse to victory, ushering in a new era of prosperity for the Amazons. Yet no Amazon, not even Otrera, can control him. 2 people even died trying. Hazel pets Arion, I guess just to put insult to injury of what do you mean? This, huh? This guy? Just pets him and then tells him that she would feed him more, but she's scheduled for an execution, which is pretty great. Kinsey asks Hilla if the prophecy could possibly be coming true, and Hilla tells Hazel, quote, you have courage, Hazel Levesque, and it seems Arion has chosen you. And I wrote my notes, did they share last names? And I looked, Hazel has not mentioned her last name since arriving at the Amazon headquarters. So how does Hilla know it?
That is a great point.
Maybe they have the palm technology that Amazon has, and so she had to scan
facial
her.
scanning.
Yeah.
They already know her
Facial
social security number and everything. Yeah.
That's why when she walked in the building.
It's legitimately terrifying stuff. I know that there's those Amazon Go stores or whatever where there's cameras and stuff off the shelves or whatever. Terrifying. I never shop at those. And then Whole Foods has the thing where it was you can pay with your palm. And I was like, I'm sorry. Is taking out our phones or credit cards with tap to pay that much harder? If anyone signs up for the pay with your palm thing, what are you doing? What are we doing? Your phone has Face ID. You can't click a button and hold it in front of your face and then put that. You got to be no, I just need to high five Jeff Bezos's network of computers. What? You want Jeff Bezos to have all of your fingerprints? What are you doing?
Sometimes, though, I do feel yeah, try to take my life. I want to see if you can handle it better than I can.
Not Jesus take the wheel.
Jeff take the wheel. At least he could fund something,
Oh my God.
Do my job, please.
Hilla then gets an idea. She confirms with Kinsey that Otrera's followers are guarding the cells. And once she asked this, I was like, okay, here's where we're going. Kinsey confirms and apologizes again, but Hilla insists, no, it's okay. Because, quote, it would be embarrassing for Otrera if her followers failed in their duties if, for instance, they were overcome by an outsider and a prison break occurred. So, oh man, we love a heist. We love a prison break. This could be great action scenes. Kinsey replies, yes, my queen, most embarrassing. And I just imagine this entire conversation sounds like people doing over-the-top Pride and Prejudice voices. So Hilla continues, of course, none of my guards would know a thing about this. Kinsey would not spread the word to allow an escape. And Kinsey replies, certainly not. It's just a perfect conversation. I had an ear-to-ear smile reading this. It's just so fun. So fun.
You should do all the dialogue like that.
Yeah, please.
Everything. Yeah, it's just an episode of Bridgerton. Yeah.
Yeah.
New
Lady
audiobook.
Whistledown. Oh,
Ooh,
yeah. It's Percy Jackson in the style of the fanciest character from Bridgerton.
Yes. Yeah.
Honestly, unironically though, who does it? It's Julie Andrews who
Julie
does.
Andrews.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I would pay a lot of money for Julie Andrews narrates the Percy Jackson series in the same voice she does for Lady Whistledown. I
Yeah.
would drop $100. Like, come
yeah.
on.
For
That'd be
sure.
so good.
That'd be fantastic.
Hilla turns to Hazel and says that they cannot help her, but if she somehow overpowered the guards and freed her friends by taking one of their key cards, and Kinsey adds that the cards have one-click purchasing, which will open the cells with one click. And I did remember, because it's funny because this is a 2012 book, so we have
Right.
to think about 2012 Amazon, which I believe that was the era where they had those stupid physical buttons where you could push it and it would order a thing. Like you could have like a toilet paper button and a Tide button. Do you remember these things?
No, I
Not-
don't.
we-
I don't.
I think I was in high school in 2012 still, so I
okay,
was
yeah,
not
right. I'm an
purchasing
old
on
man.
Amazon.
Let's see. Amazon one-click
It's okay.
button device.
I thought the one click was the idea that you click to buy. You don't have to put it in your cart. You can just click it and it buys it.
But that was newer.
Yeah, so that was a digital thing. Originally, there was something called Amazon Dash, which was a consumer goods ordering service which used proprietary devices and APIs to ordering goods over the internet. So there was like a physical button, and you could order like Tide. It looks like a little remote. At least the example here on Wikipedia is Tide. So they had like a physical thing, and you could just like in your house, I guess, push it when you're like, oh, I'm out of toilet paper, and then push the Charmin button, and then it would auto order it, which was like,
Weird.
I guess, like kind of neat and cool at the time. But even when that came out, I was in college. I was like, are we really? I guess that's funny that I'm asking the exact same question about Amazon. I was like, is it so hard to open up your phone or your laptop and just order it? Like we have to have a button that you could accidentally press. Or if you have a child in your life, like, oh, why are 38 tubs of Tide detergent at the front step? Oh, because Timmy got into the button and pushed it 38 times. You can't do that. It's like giving your kid an iPad with your credit card logged into the App Store. Like you're going to be dropping mad money on Clash of Clans and sorting cakes. Come on. You can't do that. But enough about Amazon. We've reached maximum Bezos. We got to continue. So Hilla then says, quote, if gods forbid something like that were to happen, you would find your friends' weapons and supplies in the guard station next to the cells. And who knows, if you made your way back to this throne room while I was off preparing for my duel, well, as I mentioned, Erin is a very fast horse. It would be a shame if he were stolen and used for an escape. So good. So good. So Hazel's extremely excited about this notion of potentially maybe being able to ride this horse. And she thinks, okay, all I gotta do is rescue my friends, and then we have to fight our way through all of the Amazons. Let's make it happen. She's a bit worried, though, and tells Hilla, I'm not much of a fighter. And Hilla says that there are many forms of fighting, and she trusts Hazel to be resourceful. And, resourceful she will be in the next chapter,
Oh, yeah.
to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Hilla adds that if the prophecy is to be believed, Hazel will help the Amazons reach great heights, and she begins to say that if she succeeds in freeing Thanatos, and Hazel finishes, that Otrera wouldn't come back, though it would mean that Hilla would have to continually defeat her each night until they succeed, and then Hilla, who certifies herself as a badass with this line, says, quote, it seems we both have impossible tasks ahead of us. Oh man, just what an action movie line. Incredible stuff. Oh, I love it. I'm all in on Hilla. I hope she sticks around. I hope this is not the last of Hilla. If she comes back and helps in the fight, that would be really cool. Her and Reyna together, I'm sure it'd be a very fun dynamic. I really like Hilla. She's super fun. Hazel says that she trusts Hilla and can tell that Hilla trusts her. Hilla gives Hazel Percy's necklace and says that she hopes that she's right, but adds, the sooner that they succeed, the better. And narrator Hazel then says, quote, Hazel slipped the necklace into her pocket. She shook the queen's hand, wondering if it was possible to make a friend so fast, especially one who was about to send her to jail. Me, as a proponent of fast friendships, I'm all about it. If you know, you know. We don't have to just use this for relationships when people say that you know, you know. Sometimes with friends, when you know, you know. You hit it off, let's be best friends immediately. Let's get right to it. I'm all here for it.
It's like the way kids make friends in kindergarten. I think we should bring that back as adults. Just,
Yes.
vibes.
Yes. We need more of that. There's been a couple of times where I've tried that as an adult and it didn't work. There's one time I was riding the subway and I had just come back from a little day trip to New Jersey where we went to my favorite pizza place and we had some extra pizza in the box on the subway. And some guy in the subway was like, "Is that Di Lorenzo's Pizza from Central Jersey?" And I was like, "Yes. Oh my God." And then we talked about it. And then his stop was coming up and I was like, "I'm so sorry. Can I get your phone number so we can be friends?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then I texted him and he never replied. I was so upset. I thought I made a new cool friend in the best way possible.
That's so sad.
Well, he was in med school residency, so I'm sure he was very busy to hang out with his random pizza friend from the subway. But I was so stoked. I was like, "Oh, this is a friend meet cute." And then nothing happened.
It is a great story.
Yeah, would have been the best
Right?
origin.
Yeah.
Would have been. And then there was a time where some dude just helped me. I was carrying like a big hunkin' thing of furniture when we were first moving in, and some guy helped me carry it to the ferry station just a couple of blocks, like just out of the kindness of his heart. And we struck up a conversation and we at least texted back and forth a little bit, but then nothing really came of it, mainly because Kelly and I started to have a child. So we got a little busy.
That's fair.
But
That's fair.
That's fair. I think that's valid.
Valid.
Med
Valid
school, having
excuse.
children.
so that one had a little more legs. So I guess I'm still waiting for the true friend meet cute. But yeah, I like your framing, Erin, of we need to bring back kindergarten friendship making of like, your favorite dinosaur is a stegosaurus. Let's be best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hilla tells Kinsey that this conversation never happened and then instructs her to take their prisoner to the cells as she must be handed over to Acharya's guards. And she also notes that Kinsey should leave before anything unfortunate happens, as she would not want any of her followers to be blamed mistakenly for a prison break. Narrator Hazel then says, quote, "The queen smiled mischievously." And I should pronounce mischievously. Is that how you say it? I've learned. Did you guys know the word mischievous is not a word?
Wait, I didn't know
What?
that.
Okay, so Kelly's been playing a bunch of Disney music for our little one. And obviously, We Don't Talk About Bruno comes up a lot. And in We Don't Talk About Bruno, there's a line where it says Bruno walks in with a mischievous grin. And they say it mischievous. And I Googled, I was like, I wonder, when do you use mischievous and when do you use mischievous? And according to the internet, mischievous is the correct word. Mischievous is a misspelling, but it has become so common that many people still use it.
Oh, no.
It was a pronunciation that was once valid. It was just like you could pronounce the word mischievous or mischievous. So it was like a pronunciation thing, but it was such a prolific pronunciation that now people spell it mischievous, like they add the I, but it's actually not a word.
I don't like that.
This is breaking my brain a little bit.
I'm learning things. We're learning and growing every day.
So now we all got to switch to team mischievous if we want to be correct.
Okay.
And then you can
Okay.
just be the worst person on earth when you correct people. It's also like how I did learn recently via a podcast that it is pecan and not pecan. Like it is definitively pecan because of the origin word from the language where pecans were first discovered, which like the word is like bagong or something. So that's why it's become pecan. Like people say like, oh, like in the South we say pecan. Like, no, they are incorrect. Like it is not technically up for debate. So if you want to be the worst person on earth, you just continue to out loud correct every single person that says this. But if you want to be slightly less, just you always be correct in your brain. Mischievous and pecan.
There we go.
Yeah. Got it.
So anyway, the queen smiles mischievously, and for the first time, Hazel felt jealous of Raina. She wished that she had a sister like this. And look, I don't know what's going on because we've had a couple mentions of Bianca finding a new life, and I don't know what's going on there. But you could at least have a really cool half-sister. So hold there, Hazel. You might be all right. Now, the chapter ends with, quote, "Goodbye, Hazel Levesque," the queen said. "If we both die tonight, well, I'm glad I met you." All in on Hilla. Love this. Cool end to the chapter, which I have retitled, "We Definitely Don't Plan a Jailbreak." Do you too?
That's perfect.
Okay. If you have any
That's
other
really good.
retitling. Just felt like that's what Percy would title this chapter if Percy was in the shoes and this was a
100%.
book 1 through 5 book. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 31. We'll take our mid-roll break here, the Son of Fortune, and then we will get into chapter 32. Hello and welcome to the Son of Fortune Shubio edition, back in the Shubio. And as I alluded to in the lead into this mid-roll break, we do have new merch, which I'm very excited to tell you about, and a bunch of other updates. So let's get into all of those. Yes, the merchandise. As you may have seen / heard previous announcements, we have 2 new pieces of merchandise up at thenewsolympian.com/merch. Famously, that is the very legal PDF pins, which have now been hyped up in the past 2 episodes, as well as the I Took Latin in High School notebooks. So those are up now, in addition to to a bunch of other stuff. We've got stickers. We've still got a couple more of the signed posters, but we're running low, some shirts. So all of that lives at thenewsolympian.com/merch. Now, speaking of things that everybody can have access to, you've heard me talk about the live shows time and time again, but we are live streaming one of the live shows, and you can get tickets to that live stream right now. So on April 13th, 2025, we will be doing a live show in Des Moines, Iowa, which will kick off our coverage of the third book in the Heroes of Olympus series. The plan is to cover the first 2 chapters of that book for the TNO act, and then the second act of the show will be a little Potterless segment, and then we'll end with Q&A. Now, as we always do for these live streams, patrons get 20% off tickets. So if you go to thenewsolympian.com/Patreon and you join any of the TNO tiers, you have access to a post that has a promo code that you can put in on the ticketing website, and you can get the link for that at thenewsolympian.com/live. But you'll get 20% off if you're any level of TNO patron, which is pretty sweet. And also, just like we do for every single live stream, you don't have to watch it live because tickets come with a 7-day replay. So when you get a ticket, you will get an email probably the day before or the day of the show with a link to watch the stream, but that link works for up to a week. It'll have live chat replay and everything. So even if you can't be there as the show is going on, you can feel like you're in the moment, seeing what people were responding and reacting to as we did the show. Or if you watch it live, you can watch it time and time again for a whole week. Pretty sweet. So again, the tickets are available at thenewsolympian.com/live, and you can get that Patreon discount code at thenewsolympian.com/Patreon. And of course, we do have live shows in physical form coming up as well. We've got that Midwest run coming in April. We're going to go to St. Paul/Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Des Moines, Chicago, Columbus, and Cleveland from April 10th through April 17th. And then I'll be in Montreal on May 3rd and Buffalo on May 9th. There are new shows that I'm working on booking, so stay tuned for announcements about that. But for now, if you want to get tickets to those shows, go to thenewsolympian.com/live. Speaking of announcements, you're going to want to make sure you're following at News Olympian on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter, because we may have a new partnership coming up with a merch company. And part of that will have to deal with the upcoming Midwest tour, and part of it will have to be for anyone who wants merchandise anywhere. So stay tuned. I'm in the works about making some new shirts and a hoodie that I'm very excited about. So just follow at News Olympian on Instagram, Twitter, or Blue Sky. Now, I've mentioned the Patreon a couple of times. I'm going to give a shout out to the folks who've joined the Patreon most recently. So shout out to our newest God tier patron, Katie Moon, and shout out to our newest demigod tier patrons, Alexis Swinford, Sublime, Michaela Monica, and Adrian Lansdowne. Thank you all so much for your support. May Hestia bless you that if you are ever lighting a candle with a match, you don't have that thing happen where it takes so long for you to light the wick that the match starts to burn down too far and you're afraid you're going to burn your finger and then you have to use a whole new match. You just nail it every time. Now, if you're all caught up on the News Olympian and you're looking for some new content to consume, you are in luck, because as a full-time independent podcast boy, I make a whole bunch of content and I think you would enjoy some of the other shows that I make. One of the shows I think you would enjoy is a little bit different than TNO, but still very fun, and it's called Modern Muckraker. It is a scripted show that I made 4 episodes of with a wonderful team of writers and a researcher and a composer and a sound designer and a project coordinator. It was a whole thing. We did a bunch of interviews because the show is a comedic journalism show. It presents itself as something that you would hear on like a reputable newspaper or a reputable radio broadcast program. But the questions that we are investigating are inherently very silly, such as if you lost half of an orchestra, what remaining instruments would make the worst possible sound? So if you want to listen to those 4 episodes, you can search for Modern Muckraker wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can go to modernmuck.com, and hopefully we'll make new episodes at some point later down the road in the future. Now, unless you're listening on Patreon, where you get access to ad-free episodes and early release episodes, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors to make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of those ads will be read by me, and others of them won't be. The ones that aren't read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Botswana, don't be surprised if you hear an ad in English, but maybe more relevant to Botswana. It's listed that English is the official language of the country. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back into this episode of the News Olympian. And we're back. We're here. It's chapter 32. It's called Hazel. We'll retitle it, and it's an action-packed chapter. Let's get into it. It opens with, quote, "The Amazon jail was at the top of the storage aisle, 60 feet in the air." So, okay, 60 feet in the air, different than what I was anticipating. Kinsey leads Hazel all the way up all sorts of ladders and catwalks with her hands tied behind her back, but very loosely so that she can break out of these restrictions quite simply. Percy and Frank are in chain link cages. They're each in their own one that are hanging from the ceiling. And they are whispering to each other while 3 guards look on, but they look mostly uninterested in our 2 friends. Instead, they are interested in, quote, little black tablets in their hands, like they were reading. So Uncle Rick got a Kindle joke in there. Clearly, it feels like he has a vendetta against Amazon. Makes sense given that he is a author of books. I could see why he has some disdain for Amazon. So for him to throw digs at Kindles, I think is pretty funny.
I'm a Kindle convert, though. I love the Kindle. Manasa's like, I read this on the Kindle.
I'm currently reading this on the Kindle.
I have the physical copy.
As do I. I've got the physical copy. I have an e-reader copy, and then I've got my very legal PDF. So I have the trifecta. I will say
we do that too. We have really legal ones.
Look, they're super duper legal.
They're so legal.
My very legal PDF pin's now available on the TNO merch store. He's just got in at the time of recording. He's like a little grinning evil, like, yeah.
That's so funny.
That's so cute.
This is my very legal PDF, and he looks like the little PDF preview, like on Adobe. Adorable.
I love
Shout out to Timothy Wu, the artist who made it. So good. So good. But I will say, an e-reader, super nice. I never say what brand mine is because no free ads, but it is quite nice to have. Just like for travel, it's just like, especially if you're going on, because I've said this on the podcast, but I was never into the whole reading on the beach. Reading on the beach, what are you doing? Like, you go swimming at the beach, do stuff at the beach, throw a frisbee around. Like, come on, build sandcastles. Why would you read at the beach? And then Kelly and I went on our honeymoon where all I wanted to do was read on the beach. And you know what slaps? Reading on the beach. So when we did a beach vacation-y trip later in the future, it was like the hardest part of packing was deciding which books to pack. Because like, I can't really justify bringing like 4 books. Like, this is going to take up so much room, especially because this was a trip that was like a month-long trip that ended with a couple of days in the beach. I'm like, am I really going to lug 5 books around for 30 days? That's so much space that I want to use for clothes or other things that I might pick up along the travels. But eventually, e-reader, just slide that in, like small enough to fit in your back pocket. It's quite nice. It is quite nice.
It is.
And even for me now in New York City, like I can just like put it in either my pants pocket or like my coat pocket. And I'll do that instead of like scrolling my phone, waiting for the subway and stuff. You can bring it. Like I've brought my e-reader with Percy Jackson stuff into Wicked. I read some Heroes of Olympus during intermission because I was there solo. So like, what am I going to do? Scroll my phone? No, I'll read a book. I read during intermission. I read during halftime of the Knicks game. Like, it's quite nice. I understand the hype.
I love that.
But no free ads.
Yeah, my Kindle or my e-reader. No Amazon plugs here. It is my light rail bestie. Because Seattle now has one.
Look, but it's
one
good.
Train.
I'm so big on the Seattle light rail. I was there. So I lived there from 2016 to 2018. And everybody was dunking on the light rail because they had like just kind of passed the thing and they were like, it's not going to be ready until 2027. Guess what's in 2 years? And guess what you'll have? Like a proper light rail. Like it at least gets you to a lot of different parts of the city. And at the very least, which I think it should be illegal for any city that doesn't have this. It goes to the airport and it can at least like get you close enough to where you're going where even if you got to call a cab or something, it makes it a shorter ride. Like, every European city does this and it's genius. And then America, like you have to be lucky if you're flying into a town that has a light rail that goes to the airport. And like some cities have it. Denver's got it. I'm pretty sure Minneapolis, St. Paul's got it. Like places do have it. But yeah, look, I'm all in. People dunked on it the whole time I lived there. And I was like, but you'll blink and it'll be 10 years later and you'll have a good light rail. And you do. Like, it's good.
It's so good.
It's great. It hasn't alleviated the traffic because of Amazon. Back to the book.
Yes, let's get back into our thing. Hating on Jeffrey Bezos. Okay, but anyway.
Exactly.
So what's a fun little bit is that because Hazel's the narrator of this chapter, when she sees these tablets, her brain gets broken for a couple sentences, which is great. She's like, what is this? It looks like small computers. Kinsey intentionally loudly goes, get moving, girl. So she's doing a great job of acting. Hazel's mind is racing, formulating a plan, and even with the loose ties around her wrists, she's got no weapon to use once she's free. She knows that she's got to act before she gets into the cage, but she doesn't really know what she's going to do. But then they pass a crate marked 24-karat blue topaz rings. And then I just wrote my notes, the crates of jewels wasn't just flavor text. I completely missed this, but earlier in the chapter, they kept saying they were walking past boxes and boxes of jewels. And I was like, okay, thanks, Rick. But not even remembering, it's Hazel's whole thing. She can control them. So then they pass a crate of silver friendship bracelets. Quote, people who bought this item also bought Garden Gnome's solar patio light and flaming spear of death. Buy all 3 and save 12%. Is on display next to these crates, which is pretty funny. Something about making it 12% is perfect. Like, it's high enough to be a discount, but it's also such a specific number. I really respect Rick for picking 12%.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like a Seattle thing, yeah? Like he's making a nod to Seahawks? Or am I reading into that?
I didn't even catch that.
Oh, the 12. Ah.
Yeah, maybe.
12s.
My guess is that Rick is absolutely not doing this. I don't. Maybe I am
That's probably
mistaken,
true.
but he
Giving
does
him
not
too
take
much
me
credit.
for a football fan.
No.
But yeah,
No.
I forgot that Seattle does the 12 thing. Do you know they have to pay money to Texas A&M for that because it's an A&M thing?
No,
Really?
that's so silly.
That's hilarious.
So it started as an A&M thing where they have this thing called the 12th man because in football it's 11 versus 11. And they have this thing where like, oh, our fans are so loud and boisterous that they are the 12th man. I think there might be like some other thing why it's the 12th man. Like maybe someone came in off the, like there might be some other story, but at least like the colloquial thing is that like our fans are the 12th man. And I think the Seahawks were just like, we want a thing to get the fans hype. This works for A&M. Let's just do it. But I believe they have to pay A&M money, maybe because it's like a registered trademark or something. But I believe that they pay Texas A&M money for this thing.
That tracks. You know what? It worked, though. Like, I feel like around the time they incorporated the 12s was around the time the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and it was like very hype to be a Seahawks fan.
Can't argue with
Great
results.
franchise, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, Hazel feels like a fool for only just now thinking of what to do. She focuses on sensing which crates have precious metals, and it's so many that she basically feels overloaded. But the problem is that all of these crates are not where the guards are. Like, they stop right at where she is. So she stops in her tracks, and Kinsey kind of scolds her like, hey, this is going to look suspicious. You got to keep walking. But Hazel asks her to make the guards come towards her. And Kinsey asks why, and Hazel says, please. And the guards then look at them with frowns. Kinsey yells at them for standing around and orders them to retrieve the final prisoner. And the guards say, why can't you just walk 30 more steps? What are you doing? And then Kinsey starts to formulate a lie. She looks like she's stumbling a little bit over her words. Hazel then falls to her knees and tries to act the same way that she does when she's seasick. And Kinsey tells them, okay, yeah, come on, come and get her. And then she says, if you don't, I'll tell Hilla that you're shirking your responsibilities. So one of the guards rolls her eyes and heads over. Hazel wishes that the other two would join, but she figures, okay, at least one of them is coming. And this guard grabs Hazel and tells Kinsey, look, you're not going to have to worry about Hilla much longer, so why do you even care? And Kinsey replies, we'll see, Doris. And no disrespect to any Doris, because I think Doris is a perfectly fine name. I love Doris Burke, basketball legend and commentator and Hall of Famer. But there's just some names that sound really good when you say them angry. My go-to when I would do improv shows is Rebecca. Like something about Rebecca when you say it angrily, because you can really hit the butt and then the ka, like it just hits really hard. Doris is another one, just because with that strong duh at the beginning, just like, all right, Doris. Like it just sounds great when you're sassily upset with someone. Doris tries to get Hazel to come with her, but Hazel concentrates on the friendship bracelet crate and says, not feeling so good. Doris tells Hazel that she better not throw up on her. Love this. She tries to raise Hazel up to her feet, but she just goes limp like she's a tantrum-throwing toddler. Doris calls over for another guard, Lulu, to help her. And narrator Hazel goes, Amazon's named Doris and Lulu? Which is A+. Also my thought. And as Lulu approaches, Hazel just lets out an ooh and then goes completely flat on the ground. And just as Doris is saying, oh, give me the crate explodes and a tidal wave of silver sends Doris and Lulu over the edge of the catwalk. And I was thinking, aren't they 60 feet up in the air? And then literally the next line is Hazel explaining, yeah, they might have fallen to their deaths, but Hazel's not that mean, and she channels some of the bracelets to have them dangle from their feet from the underside of the catwalk. And just a quick note, I wasn't going to make a comment of it, but then it happened 2 times on the same page. Uncle Rick using the word lame, still using lame in 2012. I'm interested to see when that phases out. But I was like, 2012 still? I guess that's like a little more, like I didn't learn until post-2012, but like twice on the same page, I was like, really? So I don't know. I'm interested to see whenever that kind of phases out as the books continue.
Heroes of Olympus in general somehow feels more dated than Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I don't know what it was. I think he was trying to use like more youth slang or something
like
like that.
Lingo, because the
Yeah.
target demographic is a little bit older now, maybe.
Yes. But a lot of it just isn't used anymore.
Yeah. Hazel faces the third guard, breaks her bonds from behind her back, grabs a spear from one of the fallen guards, prays that this guard cannot tell that she is bad with spears, which just very funny that she's going to potentially get with Frank. Opposites attract for sure. And then Hazel, who's done a cool thing, looks cool, break the things, grab the spear, face this Amazon, and then go, quote, "Should I kill you from here, or are you going to make me come over there?" A+ line. That is awesome. For a 13-year-old to think of that, yes, Hazel, go get him. The guard turns and runs. Before we can learn what silly name that they have, Hazel demands that the hanging guards hand over their Amazon cards, otherwise she'll let them fall to their deaths. So she is just passing all of the intimidation checks. Narrator Hazel says, quote, 4.5 seconds later, Hazel had 2 Amazon cards. Great. So she frees the boys. Frank calls her amazing. Percy says he'll never wear jewelry again. And I wrote in my notes, quote, "Clearly his memory's gone because he never did outside of his necklace, right?" And then literally the next line is Hazel going, "Except this," and tosses him his necklace. Like, yeah. So great. Fantastic. She says that their weapons are at the end of the catwalk. She implores them to hurry because soon, and then alarms start blaring, and she goes, "Yeah, that'll happen." This is great. Like, Uncle Rick is absolutely cooking. Like, this entire chapter is just an 80s action movie, and I'm so here for it. It's so fantastic.
I do have a question though, because like Doris and Lulu, you can argue are like more older generation names, right?
Okay.
Wouldn't Hazel say like, I don't know, she's probably seen these names before. Wouldn't that feel less weird to her?
I guess just specifically, the only named ones, I guess it's Kinsey. Kinsey's a weird one.
Yeah. Kinsey's very modern.
The other thing I have to keep reminding myself is that she is from the 40s, but she's been back for a little bit. Like, she was around when Jason was around. So she has had like 6 months or so to acclimate to what common things are. But maybe it's just because the names, even if it's not old school names like that, it's just like the queen is Hilla. So you would think people have like cool, funky sound. Like Hilla and Otrera are names. So I guess if you're going like Hilla, Otrera, Doris? It could just be like that.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't
Kinsey
fit.
is the outlier because Kinsey feels like a very modern name.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, it's interesting. So they get their stuff. They descend the ladders. They fend off the guards with exploding crates all about. Narrator Hazel says, quote, "When they got to the bottom of the ladder, they found a scene that looked like Mardi Gras Armageddon. Amazons trapped up to their necks in bead necklaces, several more upside down in a mountain of amethyst earrings, and a battle forklift buried in silver charm bracelets." And then Frank goes, "You, Hazel Levesque, are entirely freaking incredible. They're so cute. They're adorable. I love them." And just when you think it can't get any cuter, narrator Hazel lets the reader know, quote, "She wanted to kiss him right there, but they had no time. They ran back to the throne room." So, whoa, Hazel, all right. Okay, fun. They finally come across an Amazon who is loyal to Hilla. She turns away from them as they approach as if she cannot see them. So just a classic like, nothing to see here. Make your way through. Percy is confused. Hazel explains that some of them want them to escape, and she'll explain later. And they then come across a guard who squares up ready to fight, twirling a spear around and everything. But then Percy wields a riptide, sidesteps an attack, slashes her spear in half from the handle, and then slams his hilt on her helmet, which is his go-to move. I feel like he does this all of the time. Like dash, hit, bonk with the hilt. Loves doing that. And Frank, who's just become the color commentator in this chapter, where he's just excited to talk about everything that's happening, goes, "Mars Almighty, how did you? That wasn't any Roman technique." And again, just like we were saying before with Hazel, Frank is so close. He's so close. And speaking of so close, Percy's even so close because he responds, "The Gracchus has some moves, my friend, after you." They're all so close.
Yep. It's right there.
They enter the throne room. Hilla and her guards are nowhere to be found, as promised. Hazel uses a card to free Arion. Frank and Percy are cautious because the horse seems to be scary. Frank asks if the horse is even tame, and Percy doesn't think so, adding that it just said in horse speak to him, quote, "I will trample you to death, silly Chinese-Canadian baby man." And Hazel goes, "You speak horse?" And Frank goes, "Baby man." God, what a fun chapter. Percy says it's a Poseidon thing, and then he corrects, it's a Neptune thing. And Hazel says that he and Arion will get along swimmingly because he's also a son of Neptune. And Percy's confused. And Hazel lets us know as the narrator that she would have laughed if not for everything going on. But she says that the key is that Arion is fast and he can get them all out of here. Frank questions if all three of them can fit on the horse, which honestly feels like a valid question. It's what I was thinking. I was thinking, like, can three people fit on a horse? Like, I'm not an expert in horses by any means, but Arion feels quite upset about this. Percy lets Frank know that Arion said something so rude that he doesn't even want to repeat it to Frank. But Arion tells Percy that there is a chariot that he is willing to pull. And I thought, oh, right, there was that chariot from the chapters before that had the big for sale sign on it. So they're going to retrieve that one and then make their grand escape. Now, in classic fashion, one guard in front of a group of 12 goes, "There!" And then they all chase after him. And they also have men in jumpsuits trailing them. Those guys go for the forklifts when they see Arion. Hazel mounts Arion and tells the boys to follow her because she remembers where the chariot is. And then there's just this epic scene where she's riding and the boys are fending off anyone who attacks. Arion is going fast, but not at full speed yet because he's indoors. And then narrator Hazel says, quote, "Hazel bowled into a patrol of Amazons who scattered in terror at the sight of the horse. For once, Hazel's spatha felt exactly the right length. She swung it at everyone who came within reach. No Amazon dared challenge her." So yeah, she's finally using her sword for what it's meant to be used for. I'm so glad she finally got this moment.
Such a cool imagery. She just like seems like such a badass in this scene. It's so fun to read.
Absolutely. They arrive at the chariot. Percy starts sitting at the reins. Frank is surprised. A common thing. I feel like in these recent chapters, there's so many moments where Frank is like, "What? Huh? What?" Like, he's just surprised by everything. He's surprised and asks if Percy has done this before. And Percy just yells for Frank to get in and for Hazel to go. She's still on the horse. And they hear a battle cry behind them as a full army of Amazons chases after them, including Acharya on a forklift with a mounted crossbow. Arrows whiz by, stuff explodes behind them. Frank yells that there's stairs ahead and thinks that surely Arion cannot pull, but he can. He's totally fine going up the stairs. The chariot's bouncing around all over the place. Hazel checks to make sure that the boys have not fallen out of the chariot. Thankfully, they're doing all right. They reach the lobby. Arion busts through the main doors, and Hazel can feel him get excited about breathing fresh air once they are outside. Hazel yells, "Ella, where are you? We have to leave." And I legitimately, for half a second, thought, who the hella is Ella? Like, I'd completely forgotten who she was. And then I was like, oh, right, yeah, the harpy. Yeah. Hazel starts thinking the worst, that Ella is maybe too far away to hear, or maybe she was captured by one of the Amazons. And the army is still on their tail with Acharya yelling, "Surrender!" And now, once that happens, I'm like, all right, Ella's going to save the day. Hazel screams for Ella again, and then Ella enters, saying, "Ella is here. Amazons are pointy. Go now," which... great, no notes. Hazel warns everyone to hold on before commanding Arion to run. Narrator Hazel then says, quote, "The world seemed to elongate. Sunlight bent around them. Arion shot away from the Amazons and sped through downtown Seattle." And I was like, hey, finally, something, yay!
Speeding in downtown Seattle? Never heard of it.
It's actively hard to speed in downtown Seattle. There are so many traffic lights and turns and hills.
Also, sunlight? Yep. Sunlight bending? Or what sunlight?
Well, it's June.
That's
June.
true. That's true.
It's June. We're okay. It's during the 6 months where it's nice.
I'm deep in January, February right now.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's tough times. I've been there. Speeds through downtown Seattle. Hazel glanced back and saw a line of smoking pavement where Arion's hooves had touched the ground. He thundered toward the docks, leaping over cars, barreling through intersections. Hazel screams in delight, which is me on a roller coaster. I don't know about the two of you, but anytime on a roller coaster, I just scream like, yeah! Like, that's all I do. I don't do like the classic. I just scream like words of affirmation when I'm on a roller coaster. Hazel screams in delight, and the narrator Hazel says, quote, "For the first time in her life, in her two lives, she felt absolutely unstoppable." So Arion then reaches the water, and he just keeps running atop it like he is Jesus Christ. And then the chapter ends with narrator Hazel saying, quote, "Hazel's ears popped. She heard a roar that she later realized was a sonic boom, and Arion tore over Puget Sound." This is how you know Rick doesn't know anything about Seattle. Well, you would call it the Puget Sound, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this feels like the whole chapter set here made me think, okay, Rick's never actually been to Seattle. That's why he didn't really write any like specific stuff in there. Unless the toffee nod was to some brand that I'm forgetting. taffy, not toffee. They get taffy candy, and then they get coffee, and then they get grilled salmon sandwiches. I didn't know if the taffy was anything. Did that ring any Seattle bells?
I guess because saltwater? I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say Pacific Northwest in general, but that's like more Oregon coast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's not like one brand, right? And like Beecher's only makes cheese, right?
Yeah.
Okay, for a split second, I thought they might have like also done, because they got that big thing that like spins the cheese in Pike's Place, that I was like, that feels like they could do candy. With the big
Their
spinny
mac
thing.
and cheese.
Secretly.
Their
Oh,
mac
they
and
do mac
cheese
and
is
cheese.
so good.
I
It's
just never
so
ever
good.
went to Beecher's because it was always the longest line, because it's like the second most touristy thing in Pike's Place. It's like the Starbucks and that, and I was like, nah. I never ever went to it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
For context, for anyone that knows, it's right next to where they throw the fish. So it's like the Times Square of Seattle. Like it is truly in the worst possible location, but I have heard that the cheese is very good. You just have to deal with it.
Well, now it's at the airport. So
Oh,
it's
you
in
can
the
grab
airport?
some.
It's like everywhere now. It's a little bit more accessible. It's
Okay.
great.
That's at least better. Sometimes things get torn to shreds when they franchise, but if I don't have to deal with the worst part of Pike's Place to get some good cheese, I will allow it.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Anyway, though, they go over Puget Sound, seawater turning to steam in his wake as the skyline of Seattle receded behind them. So, as much as I want to be upset about there not being a lot of Seattle references in these chapters, which I am upset about, at least we do end with Erin breaking the speed of sound and doing a sonic boom, which does have nods to Seattle, because famously, the now defunct, soon to be undefunct men's basketball team, the Supersonics, was named after the plane that Boeing developed that was supposed to do supersonic speeds, but like never actually materialized because it was too loud and would just like disrupt people all of the time. There's a really good book about this called Boomtown. It's about the history of Oklahoma City, the city, and then also the history of Oklahoma City Thunder, the basketball team. But there was a thing where like with those planes, they were going to have them like have a hub in Oklahoma City. But like when the planes would actually break the speed of sound, they'd be so loud that people thought bombs were going off. And it was just like actively distracting. And that's why like supersonic plane travel has not really kicked off. But at the time that they were making a basketball team, they were developing that and they thought it was going to be the future. So they were like, let's name our team the Supersonics. So all this is to say, intentional or not, Rick did end this chapter with a great Seattle reference, so I'm on board.
That's so true. I didn't even catch that. That's great.
Again, maybe it's like the 12 thing or it was a complete accident, but it's in there, and that's the end of chapter 32, which I have retitled Surf's Up, because there is a wave of bracelets and stuff, and there's also this water that they're riding across. It felt surfing-y. Originally, when they did the bracelet thing, I was going to title it I Create the Silver Surfers, but because there were two things of it, I figured Surf's Up. Do either of you have retitling of chapter 32?
No, I don't think I can think of one on the spot, but I was going to say something about friendship bracelets, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's true. They use like friendship bracelets for evil. So something something of the effect of like we attack with friendship bracelets or something about that
Yeah.
could be pretty fun.
Something about them being a weapon.
Right. Yeah, we weaponize friendship bracelets.
Yeah, we weaponize friendship bracelets.
That's a good one.
Oh, that's good.
Well, Erin and Manasa, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for returning to the pod. Thank you for lending your Seattle expertise that we really didn't need to do because not much Seattle stuff happened, but still perfect. I'm glad we had our little Seattle triumvirate for these two chapters. If folks want to find you doing stuff, podcast or otherwise, where can they find you doing stuff?
It's been fun. Also, the use of the word triumvirate for anyone who has read Trials of Apollo, that's going to come back to you. It's going to come back.
Excellent.
That's all I'll say.
Cool. Great.
You can find us, Camp Half Pod, on all the podcast platforms. We are currently reading Magnus Chase. We just started that as we made it through all of the Percy Jackson canon. And so
Cool.
I highly recommend when you get there.
I'm definitely
going to
do it on the show. Yeah, I would say in 20 years when I finally get to Magnus Chase, because I don't know the order. But no, I'm definitely going to do it. I've heard really good things.
It's great. On social media, we're at Camp Half Pod. You can find us there. And yeah, thanks for having us. It's always fun to come on and revisit these.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Always a blast. And until next time, as we figure out where they're going, like, are they going to just go straight to Alaska? Is there some sort of stop along the way? Who's to say? But I'll figure that out in the future. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey, Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Kumpamondes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you love the podcast and you just can't get enough, there's a couple of different things you can do. First, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You can join the Patreon and you can get access to a whole bunch of fun bonus content. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And there's also the TNO Discord, which you get access to by joining any TNO tier on the Patreon. You can learn all about the show at thenewestolympian.com, and you can get some sweet TNO merch at thenewestolympian.com/merch. I've mentioned the Patreon, so let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, the Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Sabrina Balsiger, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayer, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, Sandkoff, Rika, Ryla Matthews, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, Grace, Ginger Spursboy, A Cup of Solace, Bradamus Prime, Skylar Sisters, Scott Sheldon, Sophie, Natanya Page, Ann M. Thayer Cohen, Bella, Percy Jackson, Han, Haley Hingelheimer Schmidt, Catherine Sloan, Jessica Phillips, Haley Mary, Jim Jam Koopy, Kit Kat Crumbs. I've become a real snob over children's books. I should make a bonus episode about this. If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, just tell someone about the podcast. It really does help a lot, whether that is you reaching out to someone directly who you think might enjoy the podcast. Maybe they're a big Percy Jackson fan. Maybe they've been looking for an excuse to read the books. Or if you post about the show on social media, or you leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. Truly, all of these things help. I really appreciate anyone who has done it in the past. And I also appreciate anyone who will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode, where we'll be joined by our editor extraordinaire, Sherry Guo, to cover chapters 33 and 34 of The Son of Neptune live in Baltimore. And the audio is so crisp and clean. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey, everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So recently I was doing a stream for 20 to Midnight, the D&D stream that I do with some other podcasters. And I had adjusted my microphone while my audio was on and stuff, and people said it made a very strange noise. I don't actually know what it sounded like, so I'm just going to do the similar adjustments I was doing and see if that audio comes through on the recording, and that'll be our ASMR mic segment. I had basically just picked up the mic stand and put it down, so I'm going to try that again. Also, my audio cleanup software may have completely deleted that. Who's to say? Thank you so much for listening.